Hello and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Uh, you saw my title when the rabbi had Kiddush on Yom Kippur, and you're probably wondering, why on earth would the rabbi have a Kiddush on Yom Kippur when he's supposed to be fasting all day? So we'll get to that story and some other stories. We'll lead into it with an interesting account in last week's Torah portion of the preparations for the making of the Mishkan, that's the tabernacle in the desert that becomes the forerunner for the temple in Jerusalem, and later on the paradigm for the synagogues in the Jewish community. Well, we're told that Aaron and his sons are to have a copper basin, and that basin is for fresh water, that to wash their hands and feet before they enter into the Mishkan, into the tabernacle to offer incense, so they do not die. Well, our doctors are telling us, wash your hands if you want to stay healthy at this time. We certainly want to stay healthy, so why would they want to do it then? Notice that they had a copper basin, and it's peculiar because we're told today that copper is the one surface which doesn't give the viruses much of a chance to last long. Preferably. Copper pennies are safer, I guess. And of course, they didn't have stainless steel or porcelain sinks to work from, but the Torah also did not call for ceramic or porcelain sinks. So maybe, or stone vessels. I'm sorry. So maybe they knew something that we don't know till today. They also knew, as the Torah says, to use mayim chayim, fresh flowing water, which Jews still use today, for example, in the mikveh, in the ritual bath for purity. And the water that's poured onto the hands must be flowing as it pours onto the hands. And this brings us then to something that goes on later on into Jewish law, which is the idea of nitilat yadayim, hand washing. And we may ask, well, why washing hands? Why wash our hands in particular? Although Jewish tradition has washing of the body for ritual purposes as well. And we are told, yadayim, the Talmud in Masechet Shabbat says, yadayim askaniothen. And I love that word askaniot. Askan is a word for a person who is a busybody. He has his business or her business in everybody else's business, for good or for bad. And so it is with the hands. As we are sleeping at night, we don't know where our hands are walking all over us, and they may get very dirty. So when a Jew woke up, for example, his first obligation was to wash his hands. And when a Jew goes to eat food, his first obligation, or her first obligation, is to wash his hands. Even after meals, it was a Jewish custom to wash hands so that any of the fats and spices on the hands from eating foods before there were such things as knives and forks would not get into the eyes when a person rubbed fire. Washing hands. What did your mother always teach you? She always said, wash your hands. And what does the doctor tell us now when we're worried about coronaviruses? Wash your hands. Well, that's all part of a Jewish tradition of cleanliness, using fresh flowing water, mayim chayim, living waters. Jewish tradition also is very concerned about taking care of our bodily waste, getting rid of them. That was not always true. When the great palace at the Louvre was built by the great powerful French kings, they did not include a single, we call it washroom, bathroom, lavatory. It was unheard of. Well, we were told always to stay clean. And why was that? Because our Torah was life-oriented, spiritual cleanliness as well as physical cleanliness. So where do we derive this from? There is a beautiful discussion in the Talmud that also comes at this time in the Torah reading cycle, where we're told, it's Shatotai Tishmoru, you shall keep my Sabbaths. It's in Exodus 31. And what does it mean, you shall keep my Sabbaths? Does it mean that you must keep Sabbath for everyone under all circumstances? And the rabbi said, wait a minute, before that word, you shall keep my Sabbath, it says the word ach. Now in Hebrew, ach can mean, oh, definitely. But there's the nature of Hebrews, it can also mean the opposite. However, not always. Well, however, not always is not for all people and not under all circumstances, especially when it's life-threatening. Then the discussion goes on and takes another part of the verse and says, "Ki kodesh lachem," for it is sacred to you. And from the word sacred to you, well, then they say that means that the Shabbat is for you, not you for the Shabbat. Shabbat is given as a privilege and a benefit for us, and we are not given to be slaves to the Shabbat. That's the interpretation of our rabbi. And then it follows up with the statement, "B'chai," and this is from Exodus 18. We're going to talk about Jewish laws. I live by them. We're told to live by our laws. We are told not to die by our laws. This is, again, a critical classic rabbinic teaching. The purpose of our mitzvot is to enable us to live, not to die. So we go on and say, well, give me some examples of what you mean by that. Something that's relevant for today. We're worried about the plagues. Well, it's not new. Turns out that until the beginning of the 20th century, there were plagues on the average of once every 5 years, till the modern science, cleanliness, and waste control developed. Right? Plagues once every 5 years. When we have something here, we're struck by it. We think back to what happened a century ago. Spanish flu. Well, so what was done? Nothing new under the sun. And that's why I say there's a story about the rabbi who made Kiddush on Yom Kippur. This goes back to 1848. Tremendous outbreak of cholera. In Hebrew, cholera, which the rabbis interpreted, or Jews, in the holy, ra, a bad illness, because when one had cholera, that was the end. And so there was a tremendous plague through the 1800s. It struck all of Europe. Tremendous populations were devastated, and it struck the Jewish population as well. At that time, there was a great rabbi, Yisrael Salanter, who was known as a man of great piety, great wisdom, who set about establishing schools of education for personal discipline. That was his emphasis, improving our behaviors to lead us to a better spiritual life. So it said that he saw that the epidemic was going on. It was customary for Jews to have non-Jews do their work for them. And he told his community, no, if there was important essential work, let us do it for ourselves in this community, not to rely on outside, because we need to make sure that we are doing it well, because we're saving lives. Then the doctors told him that they were worried that if his congregation would be weak, if his people were weak during Yom Kippur, the disease would strike them. So here's where the story comes out, that he announced that Jews must be ready to break the fast. And the story goes on and says he wasn't sure if they would listen to him. So you teach by example. Do as I do, not just do as I say. Story goes on that to allay any doubts, he went up on the synagogue pulpit that day, recited the Kiddush, took out his glass of wine, a piece of challah, and drank and ate. That's the story that goes around him. He wasn't the only one. There was another great rabbi of that time. Again, we're talking about rabbis who were against modernity, rabbis who were against making any changes in Jewish law. And this one, Rabbi Moshe Sofer, the father of the Orthodox resistance to modernity, the Khatam Sofer. And in his time also, it was just a decade before, there was an outbreak of cholera. He also said that when there's a danger to the public, one should eat, even if one felt healthy on Yom Kippur. And certainly, where possible, where essential, we'll say that, not to gather in great numbers in public prayer on Yom Kippur. Remember, our public is 10. What are the doctors and the government officials telling us? Not to go to any place where there's more than 10, more than a million. Maybe they want to make sure that we have our millions. But you know what we've done in the Jewish community? We've postponed our millions, postponed our Shabbat services. Well, we're just following the precedent of the great Rabbi Salanter and the great Rabbi So far. Well, what about not just prevention, but active intervention? Active intervention. Are we really supposed to meddle in what might be God's purpose? And I want to thank my colleague, Rabbi Noah Lincoln, because I'm borrowing some of his points. He had a wonderful essay, and I'm just going to take some of the highlights out of it for us. Uh, there are different approaches. Jews, in different times, had approaches very similar to that of Christian Scientists. Illness is a matter of the lack of faith. Wellness is the presence of faith. Attitude. So there is a story of a great pious man, Hanina Bedo, who was once bitten by a snake. And lo and behold, the snake dropped dead. And the saint said, it is not the saint, it's not the snake that kills, but the sin that kills. The idea that if one is righteous, one has nothing. I can't say that that became the official position, but that's a position. What about going to the medicine man, to the doctor? Well, look at sources from the Mishnah, 1800 years ago. They have a line that says, "Tov sheberofim l'geinam." The best of the physicians can go to hell. That's not a very good line, especially when every Jewish mother wants her son to be a doctor. Now she wants the daughter to be a doctor, right? Son or daughter. How can we accept that? And then there's another source, also just about as old, about the Rabbi Natan, which says there's 7 categories of people who don't have a place in the world to come. A clerk, a scribe. What's wrong with a clerk? A scribe is a wonderful occupation. And then it goes on and says, Tov Rofim, even the best of the doctors. And then it goes on and says, and a judge in the city, a magician, the chazan, we call it the cantor, and the butcher. Well, we know there's such a thing in rabbinic law as guzma de alma, a general exaggeration. That our sages like to stretch story to make their point. But certainly there was very little the doctors could actually do. You know that. There's not much we could do from the point of view of practical medicine till the last 2 centuries, really. So maybe, very maybe, the doctors were just as capable of healing their patients without intending as they were of healing. Well, should we be healing or not? Some said, well, you know what? They should be praying to God, but if they go to the doctor, it's okay. Well, others said, wait a minute, step up, right? We're going from leave it to the snake, leave it to one's inner saintliness, to it's okay, to another step up, escalation, which is to say, we go to the doctor because we believe in God. And so there's a great wise man, Ben Sira, one of the men whose works were lost until it was fully recovered for us in the Dead Sea Scrolls, said that people should honor doctors because God gave the doctors wisdom. Therefore, they cannot refuse medicines because it is the doctor's skill and the medicines of the doctor that really comes directly from God. So when you go to the doctor, you are honoring God. You pray to God for the health and then give a place to the physician and do not oppose the physician. Well, from where can we say then that not only does the physician have a permission to heal, but he has the obligation to heal? There's a discussion in the Torah about men who fight and injure one another. Someone has injured someone, he has to pay compensation, and there's a discussion what is compensation. Then in the book of Exodus, talks about rapo, irape. He shall very surely cure him, right? That word rapo and irape, it's a duplicate word. Heal and surely heal. Why twice? Well, we discern from this that certainly the physician has a job here to heal. That's paid for by the one who causes injury. And the Tosafot, one of the great commentaries in the go from this and say it's not just talking about injury that one human inflicts on another human, but injury that comes from inside, from disease, from illness, where there's no human party inflicting, but where it is an act of God, the physician shall surely heal. We go from that then the way it's codified in Jewish law. Shulchan Aruch, the guide for Jewish law for so many Jews for so many centuries. And he states that the Torah gave the doctor permission. Not only permission, but it's a mitzvah, a command, an obligation. And now we move up, escalate one more. It's not only a permission, it's not only a command, it is pikuach nefesh, which is the obligation to save life, which overrides almost every single law of the Bible. And if the doctor avoids healing, he is shedding blood. Right? So we go from the best of the doctors go to hell to the doctor better heal, or he's going to then be the murderer. Well, remember that line about the 7 categories of people who have no place in the world? They have just the opposite approach. The discussion of the Talmud in Sanhedrin. Where can a wise man live? A sage, a scholar, a rabbi. Where may he live? And he's not supposed to live out in the desert. He's not supposed to live in an isolated place. He has to live in a town that has some basic services. Well, what are those basic services? In a court. There has to be a system of judgment. There has to be a charity system. There has to be a synagogue. There has to be a bathhouse. A bathhouse. You have to keep clean. Where in medieval Europe did anybody think of a bathhouse? There had to be a latrine. Again, we Jews lived in Europe to a great part. Where was there such a thing in Europe? This is 2,000 years ago. We needed to have a doctor and a bloodletter. Right? Bloodletter was the equivalent in its day of the surgeon. It was a way of removing what was thought to be bad blood from the body, a way of speeding the healing. Right? So, a doctor and a bloodletter. You could not live in the town if that wasn't. Those 2 specialists weren't there. And of course, then the clerk and the butcher. Right? You may not like his cut of meat, but if there wasn't a good kosher butcher, you're not supposed to be there. Finally, an elementary school teacher, someone to teach the kids. Right? Notice there we've got the doctor and the bloodletter, 2 key people involved in the ancient arts of healing. You had to have them. Well, I'm going to wrap up with a story. And this is a very beautiful story, very telling story about what is our attitude towards healing the body. And it is told of Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva are counterparts. They are often at odds with each other, very opposite approaches on almost every single topic in Jewish wisdom. And what's so important is that in the story they're together. And they're walking down the streets of Jerusalem, and another man happens to be walking alongside, and they see a sick man there, and he says to them, "My masters, tell me what I should do to be healed." And the 2 rabbis say, "Take such and such herbs and compounds, and that will help you be healed." And then the person who was walking alongside them said, wait a minute, you just gave this guy medical advice. Well, who's the one that made this guy sick? Who gave him his illness? I said, well, obviously, all illness, everything is from God. Everything's from above. Well, then, he said, you interfered in an area which is none of your business. God afflicts, and then you dare heal? That's none of your business. So they turned to him and said, what is your occupation? He said to them, I am a farmer. And as you can see by the sickle in my hands, right? That's my trade. I know what I'm doing. And they said to him, well, now, who created the field and the vineyard? And he said, well, all is from God, the Holy One, blessed be He. And they said to him, and you interfered in an area that's not yours. He created them, and you go and eat their fruit. And he said, wait, you guys. Don't you see the sickle in my hand? If I did not go out and plow the field and cover it and fertilize it and weed it, nothing would grow. Fool. Don't you understand from your own occupation? Don't you understand that it says in the Psalms that as for a man, his days are as grass. A human being is like grass of the field. A human being is like a plant. Just as with a tree, if it's not fertilized, plowed, and weeded, it does not grow. And if it already grew, but then it's not watered, it dies. So to the body is the tree, the fertilizer is the medicine, and the farmer is the doctor. Well, in summation, then, we have this obligation to watch for our lives, to take care of ourselves. The idea is, we have to live by them, not die by them. The Torah is here to enable us to live. We shall find our strength and courage in our faith and in our understanding of our traditions and our teachings, and we'll keep communicating and together, whether by distance or physically, whether with the pandemic or no pandemic, and we all will celebrate Shabbat together in gladness and in joy. Amen.